Welcome to Beyond the Fine Print, the podcast where we help you simplify the ever-evolving world of commercial laws and technology and answer the major questions facing lawyers today. I'm your host, Rory O'Keefe, and in each episode, we'll be breaking through the jargon so you can stay ahead, keep it cool, and take control back. Now let's get started. Welcome everyone to Beyond the Fine Print. Today's episode is not your usual panel discussion or the legal hot take. So bear with me, it's a story. And it's a story about one lawyer, one unraveling, and one radical reinvention. So we're going to meet Alex Claus. You get that? Claus? Yeah, I know. It's a good one. Mid-career, mid-crisis, mildly allergic to vulnerability, and he's known for airtight contracts and emotional avoidance. But when their career unravels, so does the story they've been telling themselves. Once upon a time, in a bustling kingdom of Corporateville, there lived a lawyer named Alex Claus. Alex wasn't just any lawyer. They were the kind of lawyer who would draft contracts so tight even dragons of regulation wouldn't breathe fire through them. But one fateful day, the winds of change swept through Corporateville, and Alex's role was made redundant. Dun, dun, dun. The once busy castle of their inbox fell silent, and their calendar, a tapestry of meetings and deadlines, was suddenly blank. Alex, now a knight without a quest, briefly considered becoming a sports agent or a bird watcher. But alas, they were allergic to networking events that filled with "how much can you bench" conversations, or being told to engage your core. So instead, they embarked on a journey of self-discovery armed with legal dramas and Google searches like how to pivot your career without crying. So, for all of our listeners, you've been in some moment in a career choice, a career life change, and that thing that defined us disappears. Suddenly we're starting a blank page. Enter Daryl Seager, our guest. He's not your typical knight, so there's no joustings or dragons, but he's armed with wisdom and empathy, and he's helped over 2,500 leaders across 20 countries reclaim their confidence, clarity, and voice. And his armor: curiosity, compassion, and a refusal to let anyone settle for burnout or self-doubt. He doesn't just coach. He calls you out on your BS and then helps you rewrite the story that you've been afraid to tell. So welcome, Daryl, to Beyond the Fine Print.
Oh, thank you very much. I feel very welcome. That was an outstanding intro, and I don't feel I'm funny enough to be on your podcast now after your storytelling. No, honestly, that was incredible. I love it. You should have a career in stand-up comedy.
No. But, well, actually, don't tell my mother that. She get highly upset. But Dara Breen is one of my favourite comedians. So listen, we'll take the Irish thing with it. Nice. But the idea is just because I think in all of our podcasts we have, especially in the legal world, we talk too seriously about stuff. And we start with these career changes, these career voices. And redundancy is more common than we've ever had before within the legal industry, because all of these companies are looking at using AI tech. They're using all of these things, which are now kind of shifting, the need for how many people we need in different areas. But what I've noticed, quite astonishingly, there are some brilliant, seasoned lawyers, people who I've trained and admired, and not trained, but they trained me, the other way around. And they are brilliant lawyers, and they've been made redundant. And for a lot of people, it's the first time, and it's a bit of a knock. When you're losing a job, you're losing the story that you've told yourself. You deal with this a lot. So give us a few tips and tricks and tell us what you've learned with these crazy people called lawyers.
It's a big one, isn't it, for a lot of people? Because, we wed our identities so closely, generally speaking, to our careers. So actually, one of the first things is just to have a look at people's identities. So who are they? Not in terms of what they do, but because that's just a role. It's just a part of who we are. So it's trying to figure out, okay, well, who am I if I am not my career, if I'm not a lawyer, if I'm not my job, or if I'm not a particular company in some instances, because, there are some people who've worked at the same place for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and that's all they've known.
Oh, no, the one which I hear a lot is they feel they are that title.
Okay.
I love this. Their whole life is their title. Again, yeah. No, you're more than that. Please tell me you're more than that.
and that's it. It is just then having that conversation. Okay, well, what else? What else do you do? What do you enjoy doing? How do you spend your time? And to get a little bit of distance between who they are as a person and who they see themselves as a career. So, that's one of the fundamental elements is to that decoupling that needs to take place. And then we can have a look at their strengths and their values and what that means and what that can translate into differently to what they have been doing.
So do you have any like tools or any things to start people? Because there will be people right now listening who have received their, or within that redundancy, like I heard one firm that they were talking about a redundancy program over 18 months. So it's kind of like you're spending 18 months of your life wondering, am I not? Am I going to be in? Am I not? It's very hard to deal with. It's an extremely stressful situation where effectively your career plan is being ripped away, or it's not, but you don't know because it's a long time. So how would you start people off and put them back onto the right track of divorcing themselves? I didn't really mean to use such a negative word, but you know what I mean? Taking yourself away from this picture, this bubble that you've created, and bring you back to who you are.
One of my favorite activities that comes from a book I read a long, long time ago is literally just to make 3 lists, or you can do it in whatever way you want. You can create a mind map. But one is all of the things you love doing. And this can be anything. It can be going for a walk, spending time with friends. It can be writing contract. I guess some people love that.
We do.
Yeah. and that's totally fine. So all of the things that you love in one category. Then the next one is, what are your strengths, your traits, your characteristics? What are you great at is the second category. And then the third one is, well, what's important to you? And this can be things like, I want to work 4 days a week. I want this amount of money. I want whatever it happens to be. Things that really, really are important to you in a work context. Because generally what we do, or at least what I've done and what I see in the people that I work with, is we've picked a job or a career, and then we've tried to fit ourselves into that. Whereas this process allows you to have a look at, okay, well, who am I and how am I now and what is important to me? And then you go out and find, well, what fits me? So it's a slight shift. It's the other way around. And that's incredibly important, especially when we're coming out of something where our identity has been so wedded to something. We have this opportunity to reflect and sit and look and go, okay, well, that was me then, considering all circumstances now. Who am I now? And what is important to me now? And then I'm in a better position to think, okay, well, this is what my next step could be.
I like that. I talk to people and say you need to take career control back, because in companies especially and in law firms, you're kind of told what your career could look like. Either you need, in law firms, it's kind of easier. It's like you start and as a junior solicitor, then 3 years you become an associate, and then 3 years you become a senior associate, and 3 years of that you might be a salaried partner. And then after that you become equity partner, and then you resign and become a consultant, and then you retire. Yay. It's very linear. And then somebody rips that away. It certainly happened to me, because around the financial crisis in the year, whatever we call the noughties, redundancy was happening across the board, across middle tiers in the profession. And we knew it was coming because I was working construction in Ireland. Like, we all know where that went for many, many years. And at the time, your whole identity and what you'd planned for and all the courses you did and everything was all taken away. It was generally felt like it was ripped away. So you have to rebuild your confidence because your ego's been flattened. And that's not actually a bad thing, because it did force me to rethink and say, well, actually, maybe I should go into something different. And I did. I went into arbitration, which for 2 years supporting a particular company, and then expanded the role whilst I was there because I was kind of a bit bored of just doing one thing. And that led me to something else, which led me into technology, which led me all the way through into where I am now. And it's not linear, but I think for a lot of people, they're kind of say, well, where do I start? I'd say start with your LinkedIn profile, update it. We all start, look at other people's. You don't have to look at mine, by the way, but just look at other people's, what was right for you. I think Daryl and I, we actually met last year, and we were all forced to kind of look at our LinkedIn profiles ourselves anyway. So we went through that pain, and then do I have to say this? Do I really? You have to get over yourself as well. That's a nice Irish phrase. Call your mentor or get a mentor. Mentors can be friends. It could be family members, close friends, but people that you can trust will actually kind of encourage you to think. Mentor could be even Daryl as well. And I do think that writing down actually what you want, because that action beats ego every time. So just write it down, try and work your way through, create the plan and see, actually, if I'm on my career myself and I didn't have all these people influencing me, what would it look like? I think it's a great start, but I think a lot of the listeners would say, we don't have time for it. And that's the thing that I would think.
There's a quick piece that I want to just dive into. You mentioned,
Please.
I think you said a couple of times, and I think it's really important. You said, okay, somebody rips something away from you. So there's the emotional aspect, which is really important to address, and it's depersonalizing it. So it can feel that way. So you said somebody rips somebody away, and then you sort of qualified it later. You said it can feel like that. And I think that's a really important distinction. It can certainly feel like that, but it's then somebody hasn't done that. It is a process, and it feels personal, but at the same time, we have to decouple that and just see it as a process, because then when we move into acceptance as opposed to resistance, that next step of, okay, figuring out what's next becomes much easier. So yes, that's also an important aspect, is the acceptance and understanding it's okay to be emotional about it, but not seeing it as, somebody's fault, or that it's wrong, or it shouldn't be that way, because that's going to keep you stuck for longer.
I love that. And so everybody listening, this is why Daryl's on the podcast. Okay. So you can put it much better than I can.
Not at all.
He's the brain.
You said it very eloquently.
You see. So anyway, let's keep moving before this becomes a cringy moment for everybody listening. No, but let's think about it, because what we're talking about is reinvention in some way. It's not like groundbreaking reinventions like Madonna does, right? Which, we're talking about just subtle changes. So let's look at Alex. He reinvents. He's taken your advice. He's found a path forward. He's got a new job. There's new tools to use. There's new buzzwords. As we know, every company has their own preferences, but there's something missing. It's not just the office, coffee brand that they're using, or an office like the espresso machine sounds like it's auditioning for a new role in the horror movie. It's like something else is missing. So this new gig, it's shiny, it's techie, it's got more dashboards than a Formula One car. The team use AI to generate advice, automate workflows, and occasionally send passive-aggressive Slack messages. But at first, Alex is always going to be impressed with any new job, and then becomes confused, then slightly offended when the AI writer writes better disclaimers than they do. And they start wondering, am I still a lawyer or just a glorified prompt engineer with a caffeine addiction? They miss the thinking, they miss the nuance, they miss the thrill of spotting a clause that no one else has noticed. Now it's all templates, timelines, and let's circle back. We've all used that phrase, unfortunately. So this is where tension creeps back in, when you feel that the tools start replacing the craft. So Daryl, are you seeing this within your client base, this sense of unease, this anxiousness about the way in which technology is improving, but perhaps is questioning because Alex has already gone through redundancy and doesn't want to go through another one? What are your thoughts around this?
I haven't encountered it from clients yet. I know it's around, and obviously I keep up to date on things that are happening. I watched something the other day that said Microsoft had got rid of 8,000 HR employees because payroll and things like that can just be automated. So I think there's definitely elements of roles that it will replace, but I think critical thinking and the decision making still needs to be on a human level, because the connection part is not what's going to go away. It is going to simplify some processes, and I guess that's just the natural way of things, and it has been through time. Machineries took away some of the more labor intensive tasks, but we're still doing some of the finer motor skill tasks when it comes to physical labor. And I guess the same with thinking. The more nuanced elements are going to still require human input. So I don't have an answer, because I read a lot of things. I don't think we're at the end stage yet, where a lot of the tech people like to say that we're going to be in 3 or 5 years, because I just think the adoption rate isn't as fast as we think it is. There are some people using AI, but I think most people are just and I can include myself in this, at the very, very basic stages of it. So I still think there's a long way to go, but it is, as you said, a tool that we need to learn to use. We need to understand the impact, but we shouldn't outsource our thinking as quickly as a lot of people seem to be doing.
I agree. So I think when lawyers are outsourcing their thinking, their judgment, then they lose muscle memory of critical thinking. So it's the question that I always say to people when they're in that kind of frame of mind. I say, you're in an anxious state. So when you're faced with all these tools that everybody's being seduced by, this efficiency, it's not the same as wisdom. because the efficiency, these tools won't be asking that one question that should be asked, but nobody's asked just yet, if it makes sense. That's where the real value lies for lawyers, in that critical thinking piece. So question for everybody at most of the time is to try and just unpick to see, well, every morning write down like one problem you're solving or one question no one's asking. That's really how you stay sharp. But also it also tests the mettle of the tools that you're using. It's because we are still practicing law. We're not just processing inputs. We have to be thoughtful. We have to use our memory. So I think it's just these things which creep in to a lot of the conversations, especially the conference that I'm speaking at. There are certain cohort of lawyers that are concerned about introducing technology and then outsourcing thinking. And I feel that's a bigger conversation when we're looking at the lawyers that are being trained through the law schools today. And I will have a session with some of the professors in those law schools and what they're thinking about. So that is coming down the path. Look at that, a plug for the new podcast episodes coming through. But anyway, I have to do it. But I do think that it's, if you are concerned, you should be asking yourself, what's that one question that no one's asking? It's not good enough just to allow the AI tool to draft or redline a full contract and just say, well, that must be correct. Sometimes it's redlined it, but hasn't told you what's missing from the contract. And that's because you need to understand the solution, or you need to understand the pricing model, or things. There's other, or you might need to understand the pain points, because they suffer pain points, 3 years ago with the litigation, and they had to pay out a huge amount. You didn't know about it, or a supplier that was really bad, and they just said, never want to have a supplier like that again. We all know about people. Like, I have a friend of mine she's getting her kitchen done. It's supposed to take 6 weeks. Did it what? It's still trying to be done. It's over 2 months now, and there's still no sign of a kitchen inside this lovely place that she's trying to create. But we all know about cowboy construction workers. Anyway, but that's not the point. Let's get back. Change is coming. So here's the twist. Alex gets asked to lead a transformation. Fantastic. Instead of stepping up, they spreadsheet their way out of it. So it could be color-coded. It'll be a risk matrix. It's beautiful, anxiety-fueled masterpiece. And then they spend 3 weeks preparing a kickoff meeting that they never schedule. They tell themselves that they're strategizing, but really they're procrastinating with flair. Hint to a lot of people who are good procrastinators. By the way, you all are, by the way, just to let you know. Eventually, they realize they've become the bottleneck that they used to complain about. And the person who says, we need more data, when they really mean, I'm scared and I don't want to fail publicly. So this, Daryl, is all about the fear behind the facade. So this is something I really, because I've heard you talk about this before, and I'm really interested in your thoughts about how, when you got somebody and they're getting in the way of themselves, they're really, really busy, but they're not actually achieving anything, or they're procrastinating. Because, like, you remember when I don't know if it's like yourself, when I was creating study plans in university, they'll be amazing, color coordinated, highlighted with 10 different highlighted colors. I'll have post-its, I'll have stickers, I'll have everything. And then a month later, I'll have to redo it because I didn't achieve anything that was on that list. Okay, so I was enjoying university. I'll put my hand up for that. And then you go to the next one and you do the next one, but you haven't actually achieved what you're supposed to do. You say, oh no, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. Now you've got lots. Sorry, I don't know, by the way, because it's all confidential, but I'm assuming this is a common thread in your conversations with your clients. So I want to hear everything that you have on this. What can we do?
There's a definite personal element in there. It comes up on occasions. Yeah, I definitely empathize with you. I was master procrastinator. I think it comes down, at least in my case, to this perfectionism, which is very closely tied to fear of failure in terms of things not being good enough. That's a childhood trauma for me, not being good enough for either of my parents. And then, I just got me stuck in thinking, okay, well, it has to be good enough, but when is it actually good enough? And when I have worked with clients like that, it comes down to, just get shit done, because done is better than perfect. And there's, I guess, a couple of places where that really stood out. I did some work with the Metropolitan Police, and theirs was JFDI, just fucking do it, was their acronym. And also then working in tech, when you have this iterative process, get something out, look at it, assess it, analyze it, tweak it, then do it again. So you have this constant release process, but you also have a feedback cycle that tells you, okay, that was obviously, we need to get it out. And you can see it with Apple, or whatever tech company, they release something, it has errors or bugs or whatever, they fix it, they tweak it, they update it, they get it going. And so I try to use that feedback cycle and also encourage, push, I don't want to say force people just to get something done. Because the thing is, when you do it, it feels so much better than just waiting for it to be perfect. And in my example, I can't remember whether I shared this with you previously, I'd been saying this, I think, for about 2.5 to 3 years. Oh, I'm going to do an online course. I'm going to do an online course. And I don't know what happened. I'd been putting it off. I mean, the material was there. I'd plan it and then never get around to doing it. And then I really can't remember what happened. I think one day I just said, oh, fuck it, I'm going to do it. And I started doing it. And as I started doing it, I then got it finished and completed. It certainly isn't perfect, but it is done. And the sense of accomplishment that I felt from having done it, despite the fact that it wasn't, in air quotes, perfect, was incredible. And I think it took me a couple of months, and yet, I waited 3 years to actually get it out there and make it happen. So yeah, get stuff done, whatever it happens to be, no matter how small, and then iterate as you go.
I like that. I take from that is that you have there's, especially with the legal profession, there's a fear of failing or a fear of looking stupid. Just basically being exposed to lack of knowledge or a lack of expertise or whatever. But on the opposite side, if you do, leadership for me is not about certainty, it's about courage. So you don't have to be ready. You just have to be honest. And the best leaders admit their doubts and move away. That's what earns trust. It's trying to build that. And confidence comes after you act, in effect. But you need courage to move forward. And it was just when you were talking about the online course, I think it was something. I can't remember who it was, but it was good advice years ago. And they said it was about taking micro steps. And I said, what do you mean? He said, okay, well, what's one thing you want to achieve this year? And I said, well, I used to enjoy reading books, and I used to like John Grisham, but then I realized I'm in law. I don't want to have to read about law as well. So it's kind of a bit of a, because you always could pick the holes. Say that would never happen. No, that doesn't happen out there.
Couldn't enjoy it. You'd be critically analyzing. Yeah.
No. That's why I like movies. I will just immerse myself and said, try and sell me this, and let's try and switch off my critical thinking. But it was interesting because when you said, well, I'd like to actually. There was one book. You go to the airport, you pick up a few books, and then you kind of get around to reading it. You read half of one book, and you're going to finish it when you get home, and you never do. So I said, okay, well, what are you trying to do? Oh, I want to read a book a month. And they said, okay, but have you ever been able to do it? No. So, but what do you do in your commute? I could probably read in the commute. Great. How long is that? Depends. Depends on the London trains. And then you go, okay. So all I was asked to do was, all right, if I asked you to read 2 pages every day of a book, I said, 2 pages? It's madness. The chapter's longer than that. But I later realized what I was being asked to do. 2 pages every day. And say the book was, 60 pages long. It's a very short story. It's small print. You'll have finished a book a month because every day you've read 2 pages. And then some days you might actually have a bit more time. So you'll read 5 or maybe 10 and you got more done and you get more read. And it's by the end of that month or the second month or the third month, you've actually read a lot more by not putting under so much pressure to do these big, grand changes in your life. Look for the easy, small steps, because that's what they mentioned as the micro steps. Means just taking small steps forward. What direction are you moving forward? Oh, yeah. It makes sense. But unfortunately, we go for the big things because we're the big professionals and we must do everything big and grand, but we forget about the small stuff. That concept of courage, is that what you are hoping that your clients, when they're dealing with change, the way to get out of their own way is to overcome their fear of, they're looking stupid or being exposed, and actually moving into just taking it, it's adding a little bit of courage. And then after that courage comes a bit more confidence. Am I simplifying this far too much? Because I know it's
no,
you can spend months helping people walk through this thought pattern, but
you've explained it really beautifully in the sense that it is, courage and then confidence. And these two are closely linked, but they come one after the other. And it is about taking these small steps, because as you said, something big can seem really stressful and provide a lot of anxiety, and people can't see how they get there. But if you just take the first step, then the next one will come after that. And it really is about, okay, we talked about procrastination. So a lot of times it's excuses. You talked about the color coding and it's like, oh yeah, but it's pretty and it's not, it's not quite right. I haven't quite got everything just the way I want it. But if you then break it down and go, okay, well, what's the first tiny thing that you could possibly do? So, okay, well, I could read 2 pages, or I could go and speak to somebody about this, or I could ask this question. So, okay, fine, well, go and do that. And then let's revisit it next week when you've taken that action. Did you do it? Yes, great. Okay, let's take the next small action. Did you not? Okay, well, what got in the way or what was challenging? And it is definitely a process. And that's the other bit, is that things often take longer than we think they are going to. But we have to be kind to ourselves in this process, because if we're not, if we have all these expectations of how things should be and the time frame when they should be done, then this is just another thing that then frustrates us, holds us back, and can prevent us from making that progress that we want to make.
Can I take you to a point you were just saying there? It's around, you review it in a week's time and then figure out, what, loosely termed, excuses are for why it couldn't happen. And say you had to have a conversation with somebody, but they were on leave.
Doesn't have to be excuses. Doesn't have to be excuses.
Okay, teacher, sorry.
That's an assessment and a judgment there, yeah.
Well, leaving judgment out, and so the question I had was, how do you hold yourself accountable without it being a negative?
Why would holding yourself be accountable be negative?
So all the lawyers out there, we can see this one coming.
Yeah, no, I'm curious.
This is my therapy session. Stop, Daryl. It's fine. Can't afford it.
No, but I'm curious. It's a good point, because it does come with, sometimes it is loaded.
So if ever we had these training courses in-house where you have people who are legal coaches, not to the degree that you are, but it's more of when you're mentoring somebody or you're their reporting lead or supervisor, they'll come to you and you might wear a boss hat, you might wear a teaching hat, you might wear a mentor, but also you could be a coach. And a mentor is different from a coach, absolutely. So it's a different way of talking to people, which is very hard for lawyers because we like to give solutions all the time, but as a coach, you can't. You have to allow people to develop their own thinking and come up with their own solutions, because then they're invested in their own solutions, you see. I'm saying it as somebody who's dangerous because I have a little bit of knowledge, not like yours, but that's what I took away from it. But what it was every time you met that person, you go over all the things that they said that they were going to do. And then you ask them, so how did you get on? And by asking the question, you're holding them accountable, not with any judgment, and not that there's going to be any consequence because you didn't get something done or whatever. There could be a valid reason, like the person was on leave, or you sent the email, didn't get a response, but anyway, it was done. You tried it, didn't work, and but you learn from each experience, and then you can reshape your strategy and come up with a new set of things that you're going to hold yourself accountable to in the next time. But you're holding yourself accountable for it by somebody who's asking you, so how'd you get on? When you don't have the person who's asking you, you might put in a whole series of reminders in your inbox and then click snooze, for a day, 2 days. And what you were going to do 3 weeks ago is now you look at the snooze button and said, yeah, you planned this 3 weeks ago and now you're snoozing it in for another hour. How can you effectively hold yourself accountable without it becoming an annoyance or just a reminder that you're not getting things done fast enough? Again, I know you said the point around timing, but there is that sense, it's 3 weeks now. I was going to check about booking a holiday because I need one at the end of the year. I was going to take leave because I haven't taken leave in the last 3 years. So I'm going to take leave, but I haven't done anything about it because I'm too busy. I've got so many things. I've got a family. I'm working late nights, working across weekends. I didn't have time to sit down and just open up one of the apps and just to look at where I might like to go in the world. That's what I mean by accountable with the negative that can sometimes attach to it.
I think in all honesty, if I had a single answer, then I'd be extraordinarily wealthy, because that would be the solution that many of us are looking for. I don't. It's very dependent upon the person and the situation. And, I fall into the same thing on a regular basis. What I have learned and what I've observed, not only myself, but in others, is then it's a question of priority. It's like, is it that important? If I haven't done it for a period of time, am I kidding myself on how important it actually is, or how time sensitive it actually is? And it's then a conversation like, okay, I have the opportunity to, I've had my coach and my therapist to work through various things from my point of view with perspectives and timelines. But it's an honesty piece. Like, okay, I've said I was going to do this piece of work and I've put it off for a month. Okay, well, how important is it? Do you actually need to do it now? And then that actually ties into, well, how do I work best? Am I the type of person who, if it's the day before a deadline, that's when I do my best work? Or am I the type of person who needs to plan things ahead of time, in which case then I'll get it done? So I don't think there is a single answer. I think it does depend on your ways of working and your preferences, but also it's then an honesty piece around how important is this to me?
Okay. No, I like all of that. But no, let's take us back to Alex, because there's another area which I really enjoy hearing from you on this one. So Alex, who we know went from redundancy to a crazy new job. He's taking on new responsibilities and leadership. But Alex now has a new manager who's magnetic, brilliant, and slightly terrifying. The kind of person who gives feedback like it's a riddle, saying things like, interesting approach, that was bold, unexpected. Not really too sure if it's praise or a warning. And then the team communicates in emojis and silence, and Slack is a graveyard of unread messages and passive-aggressive thumbs up, although I still don't think thumbs up are passive-aggressive.
I don't agree with that one necessarily. Yeah,
there is a debate for another podcast.
I saw something like that online, and somebody said, "Yeah, that's what it means," and I completely disagree.
Yeah, different generations. I think that's the problem we have right now. But we're learning. So, but in that situation, Alex might start doubting their instincts, and they're wondering, am I overacting, or am I just finally noticing the cost of staying quiet? So you might start keeping a journal, like some people talk gratitude journals. I call it the WTF journal. So it's kind of like half therapy, half evidence for the person. But in that potential toxic environment, and not saying anything or just observing things but not sure what to do, that does play on people's minds. And then can also knock your confidence a bit, because you're not really too sure. Am I getting the right feedback? Am I not? If I ask for feedback, does that look weak? Lawyers never want to look weak, ever. So what are your thoughts to help Alex in this situation?
I think I would ask Alex to get a little bit more clarity, or ask for more clarity with regards to feedback. For one, you can say, look, thanks, boss, for that feedback. I'd just like to get clear, what exactly do you mean by that? Or, if you want to give him a focus, what particularly was bold, or what was, I can't remember the example that you used, or
unexpected.
So what was so what about the project was unexpected, or what would you have liked to have seen, or what, you said unexpected, what would have expected been? So you're giving the other person a bit more of a framework to get the information that you need. So it's really important that you understand, okay, so I've got that feedback, bold and unexpected. What is missing for me? What do I need to know? Okay, I need to know whether that's criticism or whether it's praise. Okay, so what specifically was bold and what specifically was unexpected? And then based on that response, you can go, okay, cool. This is now how I need to ask for feedback going forward, so that it's more tailored to what is important for me.
I think what I'm taking from what you're saying is to speak up, because I think toxicity always thrives in silence. And all that happens is you end up perhaps seeing things that aren't there. Then you start looking for another job, and you start moving, and then you move into a new job, and you create a narrative to allow you to move into a new job, when perhaps a bold was, that was brilliant. It was very bold. I never would have done that myself, but you never gave anybody a chance to do it. Or you find out, actually, yes, it is a toxic environment and life's too short. Move. It's like you don't deserve it. So just find somewhere where you do deserve. You've already gone through that thinking process, what you want. So make sure it is what you want.
But without, as you said, without the trying or the clarification, I mean, most of the time, people aren't trying to be assholes, or they're not trying to be toxic. But it's an environment that can be created when there's a lack of clarity. Definitely, if there's a lack of psychological safety, and I know that's a big term that gets bandied around a lot, but it's when people stop speaking up, when people stop sharing what they are unhappy about, I don't think there's anything wrong with sharing what you're unhappy about. I don't like this concept of, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. No. If there's a challenge, cool, bring it up, and then let's figure out a way to deal with it. It doesn't mean I have to, as a leader or a boss, I have to take that on, but I want to hear what is working and what's not working, and then how we can manage both of those particular situations. So yeah, environment to peer, but then we need to think about, okay, have I exhausted all possible options that are in my control or in my influence in order to change that? If it is completely out of my hands and I've done what I can, then of course, it's then up to you to choose not to be there.
So if we take this Alex persona and say, okay, there's a lot that has been going through their mind and we're getting to the root. It's not the job, it's not the boss, but a belief that you'll never be enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then what happens is Alex begins coaching with Daryl. There we go. Okay, he's not going to preach any confidence. They arrive armed with a spreadsheet of flaws, a color-coded list of goals, and a deep fear of being ordinary. And they've spent years chasing gold stars from people who don't even remember their name. And they've confused perfection with professionalism. I love this. Sorry, you won't, and nobody knows, but Daryl has on his board behind him is a list of his own flaws that he's written down. I won't tell you any of them, by the way.
It's okay. I'm happy to share.
So he lives and breathes his own thinking as well, which is actually it's quite good. When we say practice what you preach, he does it, which is quite good. But if you're looking at the Alex, we did touch on perfectionism. There is a question I always have around people is how everybody defines success differently. And perhaps some people are redefining them as about titles and less about impact. And some people are less about titles and more about impact. They're less about being impressive, but more about being honest. And I think some people over the last 15 years, we talk about authenticity as well. And they finally feel like they're breathing again. But it's not just because they've stopped holding their breath every time someone says, can I give you some feedback? That can be, for all lawyers, we go, uh-oh. It's like, and sometimes it's, oh no, it's great. It's just because in law, we tend to work from the worst case scenario and then build everything back up. And so that tends when people say, can I have a chat? And they don't tell us what they want to have a chat. We always go, uh-oh, are you free to talk? Oh, what's this about? And then you realize, oh, I just wanted to tell you that you won an award. And I was going, oh, okay, thanks. For what? Don't remember applying for anything. Thank you very much. And still that need for it. But I just really want to get back into that. So when you find out actually all of these things that are happening in your life and all of these doubts and all of these confidence knocks are stemming from this real sense, especially in the legal profession, of the need to be perfect and to be the title, to be always impressive, never show weakness, be the, what do clients also call the bulldogs out there? We want to be the Rottweiler, not the Chihuahua, although Chihuahuas are pretty evil when they need to be. No offense, Chihuahuas, I do love dogs. And if any Chihuahuas are listening, none were hurt in the making of this podcast. All right. But perfectionism, sometimes I feel is dressed up as ambition. But I always feel that you're chasing, when you stop chasing, shall I say, enoughness, you start living. And so within your sphere of how you coach people around this, especially very stubborn lawyers, as you know, one already talking to you. But I just want to kind of figure out from yours, what are your thoughts around this? And what kind of things can people start doing to just relax and enjoy life?
It's a good question. I think it comes back to what we discussed before in terms of figuring out what's really important to people. Yeah, look, I'm quite open with my, in inverted commas, flaws. It's just these are elements that I know, they're not necessarily bad things, but if I use them too much, or if I go over too much, I'll give you context now. I might as well talk about them. So, so I have impatient, judgmental, demanding, jealous, vain, and then low self-esteem was there from a very early age. So, being impatient isn't necessarily a bad thing. I respect people's time, but obviously then it can move into a negative if I'm getting anxious and upset that other people are not doing things. So That's as one example. And judgmental, again, as human beings, it's important to understand safety and things like this. But then if I'm criticizing other people for not doing things the way I would do them, then that's not necessarily a great thing. So this knowledge and understanding of how we are and who we are and where that comes from, I think is important, because then it lets us understand what we can let go of, what's useful, and then what's not useful at the same time. So, I mean, you said this enoughness, but sometimes good enough is good enough. I think we said that before earlier in the podcast as well. So a lot of it comes down to just understanding ourselves. And this maybe comes back to the point that you said, that we're always busy. We've always got stuff on. We haven't got time to do this stuff. And this is, I think, for lawyers and a lot of other high profile professions, this step back, or the ability to pause and reflect and look at me as a person, feels quite uncomfortable. And it's like, yeah, but this is a bit fluffy and waffly, and it's not, analytical and critical and detail and data. And yes, I understand that, but without really understanding what makes you tick, how can you address any of these challenges that we've mentioned today? I mean, you pretty much do that for your clients. You analyze risk, you analyze what is and isn't working, you analyze how the situation could play out. You just need to turn the mirror back onto yourself and do the same thing there, because with that then data and information, you can make more informed decisions going forward.
It's an interesting question that I always challenge leaders as well, or anyone in a leadership position themselves, is that what you're asking of yourself. People say, well, I won't ask anybody else what I don't ask of myself. But the problem is, if you're asking yourself always for perfectionism, and then you're wondering why you have a high attrition rate, perhaps that's something to reflect upon. But yes, okay. Now, as I ask all guests to Beyond the Fine Print, I do want to land on two final questions for you, Daryl. I'm sorry for everybody who wants to hear more from him, but please reach out to Daryl. He's extremely approachable.
Who told you that?
Yeah. I don't know. I'll find out. No, but anyway, I did get these simple questions. What is one thing that people often get wrong about your work?
I think it's the fact that sometimes people want me to tell them what to do. And occasionally I am more directive when people are really stuck. Sometimes they need a push or a kick or a nudge. But, at the end of the day, nothing changes unless they do the work. So I can't fix something for them. They have to go away and do the work. And sometimes this is something that people misunderstand.
What's one thing that you find fun?
Just seeing people succeed. It's really, really awesome to see people come. Maybe they're struggling with something. I had a client the other day. I said the other day we were working together, but I remember she said, it's taken me 3 months to understand what you actually told me in one of our first conversations. Yeah, cool. I love that. I mean, I get this sense of, I like being right, as we all do.
So do lawyers.
I told you so. But it's great when people can reflect, because I've been through that on my journey as well. It's, somebody says something to you, or they make an observation, and it has to percolate, and then it takes time, and then you go, oh crap, yeah, okay. And then you have this realization, and then from that point on, things are different. And that's really cool.
That's brilliant. No, I appreciate this. No, Daryl Seager, thank you very much for all your time.
Thank you very kindly as well.
On our little podcast, Beyond the Fine Print, I know my fine friends are out there taking in an awful lot of what you've said and the tips and tricks too. In my vernacular, get out of their own way. But it's definitely a process where I think a lot of people would take a lot from. So thank you again for this.
Pleasure. Thank you.
We thank Alex Claus as well for taking us through his journey from burnout to breakthrough, and reminding that stories we tell ourselves can change, and when they do, so can our lives. Thank you, Daryl, for showing us how to rewrite those stories with courage and clarity. And to our listeners, thank you for being part of this conversation. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep stepping beyond the fine print. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Fine Print. If you've enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss the next episode. And if you have any burning questions you want us to cover in a future episode, send them to Beyond the Fine Print at rmoklegal.com. See you next time.